Give me a Mount Rushmore. You don't got to go 1 through 5. No order, but just give me some guys.
Ooh, Mount Rushmore DBs.
When you walking out there to play them, you know they're going to go give you all hell.
I just give you one. Denzel Ward off dunk. I think that's for all three of us. You know what I'm saying? Not just because Cleveland talked the most shit. Just because, you know what I'm saying, Denzel Ward did his thing. You know what I'm saying? Same for Greg Newsome. I don't think he elite, but he definitely they all just talk crazy. So it ain't somebody we circling. It's, yeah, we see them.
Tighten up for.
Even that. It's just no. It's game time when we see him. It ain't no crunch up game. It's on site. Like, yeah.
Definitely concerns me a little bit, you know what I mean? But, you know, I packed that thing too. So he come around this way, you will get caught.
You know, sometimes you see a clip and it just warms your heart at the end of the day, right? And that's what I felt when I saw that clip, man, because that is exactly why I would feel like the Browns and the Bengals for maybe this year and years future are probably going to be, I don't know if it's going to be like Ravens Steelers, right? Where it's a whole national thing and everybody's invested. I don't know if that's the type of attention that the Browns or the Bengals would command just because they're not necessarily been top shelf brands over the last 10 years for whatever reason when it comes to the perception of the outside world. But inside football, like hardcore football world, I think this rivalry has the potential. And that's why I want to talk about today is the potential of this rivalry and why I think there are some seeds in there that are very interesting that make a rivalry. And while these might not be the two best teams in the North, I don't know that, right? We don't know what Baltimore is going to look like. But I'll talk about why I think these two teams are primed to probably bang up against each other for the next 5 years or so, right? So the first reason I have is narrative-wise. And I know Browns fans, you know, we're going to have to get used to this in some way or the other. But narrative-wise, there is a bad and good guy, right? Like there is somebody for the casual or outside fan to root for in these games. Because when you look at it, these teams are similar, very similar, but only similar in ways that directly contrast each other. And what I mean by that is both teams have similar strengths, but those strengths smack up against each other, right? It's usually strength on strength when the Browns match up against the Bengals. Quincy, what in the world do you mean by this? Okay, I'll explain. What's the Bengals' biggest strength? I mean, outside the quarterback position. What's their biggest strength? Their wide receiving room. Okay. What's the Browns' biggest strength outside of what we know now, Myles Garrett, right? That's the franchise player we've actually seen in the Browns uniform. Well, it's the secondary, right? As deep as Cincinnati is at wide receiver, the Browns are just as deep at DB, right? Denzel Ward, Jamarr Chase. It's an even matchup. Then you have T. Higgins, Greg Newsome. That's an even matchup. Then you get to a guy like a Tyler Boyd, and you know the Browns have multiple guys they could throw at Tyler Boyd on multiple looks. You know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or nothing, but JOK is more than capable of covering some parts of the route tree of Tyler Boyd. Then you have Grant Delpit. You got John Johnson who could slide in there. Ronnie Harris ain't gonna do that. But you know, AJ Green. The list goes on. Greedy Williams. I mean, I almost forgot about Greedy. They're LSU brethren over there. So you see how that matchup works. And it's not just a matchup, right? Because there are other teams in the NFL that can match up against the Cincinnati Bengals corner for wide receiver. I would say it's probably like 3 or 4 other teams. But do any of those teams have the familiarity and confidence, quite frankly, over those units than the Cleveland Browns? Because not only do those teams play each other more than you would play a AFC East team or NFC East team that might have the personnel, we play each other 2 times, right? You look at sports and you look at the great rivalries in sports. One of the things that's underestimated in that is familiarity, right? I know it's coming. You know it's coming. Try to stop it. And whoever wins that battle will be happy, and whoever doesn't will be incredibly frustrated. And that's where a rivalry starts, right? You need that familiarity. If you don't believe me, what are the best rivalries in basketball? It's usually not even division rivalries in basketball. It's playoff series rivalries where teams year after year end up in these 7-game series with the same damn team. Cavs, Golden State, right? Bulls, Knicks back in the day, Bulls, Pacers. Like, you can go and name it off. It's those things that make you a rival with the team, right? When you have that familiarity and you've both traded blows. Same thing can be said in college football, obviously, right? It's not Alabama, USC. That's the big rivalry. It's not Alabama, Florida. That's the big rivalry. It's Alabama, Auburn. It's Alabama, LSU. It's Ohio State versus Michigan. It's teams that are not just in the same conference, but in the same division, because you're guaranteed every year to play that team. You know for a fact that you're going to play that team. You know that that team knows what you like to do. You know that that team knows how to stop theoretically what you like to do. And you know it's going to be about physicality at that point. I mean, that's what it's all about. The familiarity of you with another team. That's what breeds this rivalry, right? So you have that aspect of it, right? Not only are these two teams very familiar with each other, right? Where are the Bengals' strengths? Where are the Browns' weaknesses? A lot of interesting chess pieces line up, right? Jonah Williams is a solid tackle against every other pass rusher in the NFL, it seems like, but Myles Garrett, right? And that's where we get into the second part. In order for a rivalry to actually hit, somebody has to feel like they got something to prove, right? Like it needs to get to that point to where somebody feels like they got something to prove, right? The reason the Browns and Ravens haven't really hit like that is because there's never been a need to prove anything against the Ravens, more so than like, oh, the team moved and everything. But once they won that Super Bowl, it really was out the window of proving anything to Baltimore, right? In a single game at least. So yeah, you might not like the Ravens, you hate the Ravens, but it ain't really like that with the Ravens because for a while it wasn't competitive. Same thing with Pittsburgh, right? But it's a little bit different with Pittsburgh because you do feel like you have something to prove. The Browns are on the other side of this with the Bengals, which is a side the Browns aren't used to, where Browns really don't got to prove nothing to the Bengals. Because no matter where the Bengals have been in this rebuild, they have been at the top of this rebuild. They have been at the bottom of this rebuild the last few years since 2018, right? They have been in various points of wherever the Browns were, right? In 2018, I think both teams were kind of evenly matched. They're both weren't in great places. 2019, both were in the same, terrible place. 2020, Bengals were significantly worse than the Browns in 2020. I'll give them that. But the Browns were significantly worse than the Bengals in 2021. And what hasn't changed is that the Browns, more often than not, and I'm not even saying like 60%, I believe they've only lost twice to the Bengals, if not less than that, in that time span. Some of them players been there that entire time. Tyler Boyd, been there that entire time. T. Higgins, been there that entire time. Joe Burrow, 0-3. Versus the Cleveland Browns. So you have a very talented, very good team and very young team in the Bengals that, hey, they don't feel like they have anything to prove to Baltimore. They beat the tar out of Baltimore. They don't feel like they have anything to prove to Pittsburgh. They beat the tar out of Pittsburgh and swept them last year. But they didn't beat the Browns. They still feel like they have something to prove to them. And I know Bengal fans like to, make the joke or say the Browns fans are saying that it's their Super Bowl. We're just pointing out a fact here is that it seems like those losses against the Browns really do bug the Cincinnati Bengal fans. And it does bug the Cincinnati Bengals players. It clearly bugs the Cincinnati Bengals players. None of these dudes ever get on podcasts without mentioning the Cleveland Browns and how much they talk or whatever, right? Like I've seen Joe Burrow, I've seen with their wide receivers, I've seen like even Joe Mixon. I think like it's always, hey man, something about Cleveland. They got to mention this. They like to say that the Bengals live in the Browns' head rent free. Browns players don't be going out their way to talk about the Bengals unless you bring up the Bengals. And, they're a good team. We ain't really worried like that. And that's what makes a rivalry, right? When one team is thirsty to prove something to the other, when one team feels like that this team should not get past them, this is the perfect big brother, little brother rivalry, right? No matter how big little bro get, big bro still feel like he should still be in charge. And that's what it's what it looks like, right? Also, if you're a casual fan, or not even just a casual fan, and why I think this rivalry should have legs is if you're just a fan of another team and you're looking for a rivalry, a lot of times you need a narrative. You need a good guy and a bad guy. That's why pro wrestling has been around forever. They have figured out that formula. You need a good guy, somebody to root for, and you need a bad guy, somebody you want to see fall. And boy, oh boy, will the Browns be the bad guy, especially in the light of the Bengals, because the Browns are kind of like the dark side of the Bengals when you look at it, right? Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson are incredibly similar quarterbacks from an on the field prognosis, right? Both don't have the strongest arms in the world. Both are very accurate. Both give you hefty zip. Both are very escapable in the pocket. Both are pretty mobile. I mean, Deshaun's a little bit more mobile than Joe, but Joe's probably I don't know, Joe's more accurate as a pocket passer, but I would say he has done more in the playoffs than Deshaun Watson, right? There's some trade-offs there, but both these players are very similar on the field, but they both have very different reputations now off the field, right? Joe Burrow is seen as the golden boy, the golden child, the new one, the next face of the NFL. Deshaun Watson is seen as the face that the NFL wants to forget, hide behind closed doors, and have nobody talk about no more. That's going to be an interesting thread, right? You look at the reputation of the Browns' best players, and even Myles Garrett has a bit of a tainted reputation, even though, that's a bit more contestable. But you see what I mean here, right? That entire situation is going to make the Browns, feel like the bad guy to the casual, and these up-and-coming Bengals, maybe they'll be the good guy, or maybe that dynamic switches if the Bengals get cocky and everybody gets tired of them doing the little gritty dance or whatever it is. It could flip. I'm not a fortune teller when it comes to that kind of thing, but you see what I mean here, right? There's all the dynamics in place for this to become one of the best rivalries in football. And I just hope it pans out, right? That's just my hope. As a football fan, I am excited for October. I'm excited to play the Bengals because, I don't feel like they outmatched the Browns. Now, again, depending on who playing the quarterback position, how many points the Browns can put up and how much stress is going to be on their defense. But even then, I wouldn't put the Browns out of it if it's Jacoby Brissett. And I don't think it would be a asterisk if they beat us without Deshaun Watson, given that that's who we're throwing out for that game, right? But that's just my thoughts on that whole situation. I just want to have a fun conversation. We've been talking about some pretty depressing stuff, right? Deshaun Watson suspension here, wide receiver injury here. I just wanted to talk about something a little bit more optimistic and a little bit more fun because, hey, man, we revving up for a preseason game here soon. And also make sure you subscribe and notify so you can watch that preseason game with me because I'll most likely be live during the first preseason game at the very least. So check that out. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you don't miss a thing. But yeah, that's it, man. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.